Right. Well, it's a very great pleasure and privilege to have a chance to talk to Li Bozhong, who I've known for some years as a colleague and visited in China and seen in Cambridge. I always start by asking when and where you were born.
I was born in Kunming, the capital of Yunnan province, China, on October 1st, 1949. And you may know this is a very special time in modern Chinese history, because on the first day of this month, People's Republic of China was founded. So I myself and the generations of my age are called the same year people with New China. So we can say I'm a witness to all things happened in China since 1949. Happiness, hardness, and other things. So in this sense, to a historian, I think I'm lucky because I can observe the great changes which happened in China just at plot.
Can I ask you something about your parents, or as far back as you like to go, what they did and where they lived?
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was born in a family of a scholar. My grandparents, my grandfather was a scholar, and my father also too. My father was educated in Peking during the World War II, but he left Peking in the eve of the Japanese occupation, and he went back to Kunming and taught at Yunnan University for more than half century. He passed away just in 2008 at the age of 93. My mother is still alive and in good health. As a son of a historian, of course, I was educated in some mixture of traditional Chinese way and revolutionary way, because in 1980s the Chinese education system had been transformed completely into a Soviet style. So my education is quite strange. At home, my father just tried to educate us in traditional way, but in school we were educated in Soviet way. For example, my name is Bozhong. It's a very traditional Chinese way. Bo is generation name. All of my brothers, cousins of the same generation share this name. But Zhong is my personal name. And my father gave me this name from Confucian teaching. Zhong in Chinese tradition, in classical Chinese, means gravity and decency. So at home, I was taught by my father classic Chinese and some knowledge of Western scholarship, but at school we were taught modern knowledge, science, and also political classes. So
by political classics you mean Karl Marx?
Karl Marx, and later German mouse works.
Yeah.
And about the foreign languages, then the English was not taught at school in China in my generation. So I learned Russian from primary school and high school. As most historians of my father's generation, they didn't love Russian because the Tsar Empire occupied a large part of Chinese territory, and the Soviet Union refused to return this territory to China. But my father still encouraged me to learn Russian language and culture. He said, we don't have no choice. We have no choice. And another thing is, Russia is a great country, in particular in the modern history, and the powerful neighbor to China. So you still know more as possible about that country. So at high school, then I spent a lot of time in Russian learning, language learning. So I could read Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and Turgenev, and other great Russian writers' works. Everything seems to be going well until the Great Leap Forward. Nowadays, I still have very fresh impression about.
So how old were you then? That was 1956, 57, was it?
No, it's a Great Leap Forward. It's 1958.
58.
To 62. I still have a very fresh impression about the hunger. All Chinese people suffered then.
What is the current estimate of the deaths through the Great Leap Forward?
And the estimates are quite different nowadays. According to the new published history of Chinese Communist Party and in China, more than 10,000.
10 million.
Oh, 10 million. Sorry. More than 10 million Chinese people died. But according to other estimates, much more. But I remember that then we always felt hungry, and a lot of neighbors, students in Yunnan University just not died, but heavily sick because of malnutrition. And every night, my parents just one thing they had to do is press our legs and see what happened, because in Chinese called 水肿病, without enough nutrition, your skin would be sorry.
That's fine.
The situation improved in 1963, but very soon other political movements followed. And in 1965, actually the Cultural Revolution began. Formally in year. But
can we go back again a little bit to because that's such an important, interesting thing. Yunnan was particularly badly affected, wasn't it, by, I read a book called The Hungry Ghosts, which was about Yunnan, I think, and it was an area that was very badly affected by the Great Leap Forward, the hunger of the Great Leap Forward. Is that right?
But I think compared to other places, say Sichuan, Henan, situation in Yunnan, it's
not as bad.
Comparatively better, because what mainly reason is the transportation. Then there is no real we connect Yunnan and other parts of China. So if the Yunnan's green, if the central government try to transport agricultural products from Yunnan to other parts of China, it's very difficult.
I see.
So Yunnan people could keep most of their products.
Did you see deaths? Do you remember seeing people actually dead, or as a result of the hunger, or just the malnutrition?
No, I didn't. But I saw a lot of students just lie in the auditorium of the university because they are too weak. They receive some treatment and actually gives some more food. And most of them, I think, recovered later. But if enough food were given, they are young, so they recover. They could recover.
Was your family? Maybe you're going to come to this, but was your family sent away from Kunming during this period?
No, it's later.
Later.
It's later.
Okay, right.
In the winter of 1965, Mao Zedong launched a movement against so-called Sanjiacun, three family village. It means three famous scholars in Beijing, Deng To, Wu Han, Liao Mosha. Three of them also are high-ranking officials in the Communist Party. One of them, the vice major of Peking University, Peking City, metropolitan Peking, Professor Wu Han, was a famous historian of Ming history, and he was my father's former teacher at a graduate school during the war. And so Wu Han was targeted by Chairman Mao himself as an anti-revolutionary and all country, and launched a very big movement condemning Wu Han in the whole country. So my father immediately became a public enemy or enemy of the people. So he was sent to the private jail run by the Red Guards, and my home was searched for many times by Red Guards, and all books and private letters, diaries were taken out, and books were put in the square of the university with other books taken from other professors' home and set fire. So, in an essay in memory of my father, I said, in the world history, I saw such things only several times in Chinese history, the Qin Shi Huang times, and in other countries, say in Germany in 1933, and in Libya, in Afghanistan under the regime of Taliban. So it's a terrible day. And so since my father became an enemy of the people, then I was a high school student. I became immediately the children of an enemy. So I had to wear a black armband on which there are three big characters, son of bitch. And I had to go to the Red Guards and confess my guilty. And later, I and many other many other fellow students were sent to the countryside to work. This countryside is pretty far from Kunming, 1,000 kilometers away in the Sino-Burmese border. And the local people are not Han ethnic group, Thai, a branch of the Thai people. This is my first time to confront the non-Han culture in my life. And I love the local people very much. They are very kind. All of them are Buddhists. And I think they are really kind people. And I spent 3 years there to plant rice, raise pigs, buffaloes, and of course, according to Mao's policy, we have to receive the re-education from the peasants. But the peasants treated us very well, just like a family. They said, "Oh, you're just like our children. And then your children, they don't know much about what happens in Kunming. The children couldn't support you, so they sent you to our place. So just take us as your family." So I love them very much. So I learned their language and customs, and dress up just in their way.
Was your mother there with you, or?
My mother? Then my family was sent to 5 different places. My mother and 2 of my brothers were sent to Dali in the countryside. My sister was sent to southern part of Yunnan, and another my brother was staying in Kunming he was very young, just a graduate from primary school, and jobless. There, nobody, he's too young to send to the countryside, but nobody gave him a job, so he stayed there. But fortunately, he studied, taught by himself.
And your father was in jail?
No, then sent to the countryside with other professors who were condemned as anti-revolutionary scholars and under the under the supervision,
no worry,
supervision
Yep.
of the Red Guards.
Yep.
So in different places, in the countryside, and since the local people treated us very well.
Have you been back to this place that you
5 years ago, I
revisited?
I visited them. The old villagers still remember me and invited me to stay overnight at their home. So I just moved. Indeed. In the countryside, no electricity, no modern facilities. Life is very simple, and but the life there was not very hard because the local people are very, very nice. So there, I began my study of Chinese history and English. Some of my friends took some books with them when they were sent to the countryside, including called a famous book called 资治通鉴. This great historical works produced in the Song dynasty. The best one, history in China. This book was allowed to read because Chairman Mao himself loved this book. So, but this book very big, written in classic Chinese, of course, in the Song dynasty. So I read this book many, many times and make a lot of notes. But you know, as a high school student, I have some difficulties when I read this book. So I just make notes, and someday I sent a letter to my father, just ask some questions about some very special terms in Song dynasty. But this book, this letter, when this letter reached my father, reached my father, the Red Guards searched it and said, you and your sons still make anti-revolutionary actions. So he was condemned very harshly. And the Red Guards, not Red Guards, in the former name now they called Revolutionary Committee. They sent a letter to the Revolutionary Committee of the People's Commune where I worked and said, this guy is a very bad guy, you should put special attention to him. So I was summoned to the office of the head of the commune and was investigated. What did you do? And all my private letters were taken away and never returned to me until now. But the peasants, the villagers said, hey, this is a very good guy. He didn't anything against the government, so they had to release me, the committee. But still have other trouble. Before I left Kunming, I met my father very briefly. My father said, in the modern world, English is a very important language. If you master English, you will open a new world. I'm sorry, I couldn't teach you English now. His English is very good. You should taught by myself, by yourself. So when I was the countryside, I decided I should do that. In that period, in that time, English was regarded an imperialist language. And in particular in the bordering area, if you want to learn English, you would be seeing a spy or traitor of the country. So it's a very dangerous thing. But fortunately, I got a textbook which was published in Soviet Union to teach Russians English. So there were only Russian and English, no Chinese characters at all. And as most publications, Soviet publications at that time, the real icon of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. So I learned this book, but no teacher. I just try to memorize the words, how to spell, but I can't pronounce. I couldn't pronounce. So someday, some person reported this thing to the Revolutionary Committee of the commune. I was summoned to the commune again and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Nothing." They said, "Somebody report you are studying English." I said, "No, I'm reading Lenin's work." I showed the book to them. I said, "Look, it's Lenin's icon. I learned this because the Russian is Lenin's language. he wrote these works in Russian, so I think it's the best way is read the original. Do you oppose me to do that? He said, no, definitely not. You should be encouraged. I will punish the report. So it's very difficult for me even now to speak English because I never take any courses since then about English language. So I spent 3 years in the countryside, but in this bordering area, a lot of my fellow students, they couldn't stand the unfair treatment by the government in this land, so they fled to Burma. And through Burma, actually, very few stay in Burma. Most of them just through Burma to Thailand, then some to Taiwan, some to US, and still some to Soviet Union. They thought the Mao's revolution is not real revolution, not real socialism. So they went to the embassy of Soviet Union in Yangon. You can listen. We listened radios in border area quite often. Nobody, in the village, nobody check you. So today you can see, some person they make a speech in the VOA, Voice of American. Next day some person make the speech in the Taiwan's Free China radio, and the third day maybe they make speech, some other make speech in Moscow, the radio of peace and the progress. So finally the government find it's a really problem. So the government decided to took all students back. But many of them, some of them, they have a so-called good family background, was sent to the college or to the army or to the factories and became a worker. But for me, no, nobody wanted me. So I and some fellow students had to find some part-time, some jobs, temporary works in the construction sites, in canteen, not cooks, because we don't have the techniques, as waiters or transporters. And finally, the authority of Kunming decided to recruit some school teachers, but not, in those days nobody wanted to be a teacher. They pay very badly, and even your students could treat me very badly, because Mao Zedong said most teachers are bourgeois. So I went and became a high school teacher for 4 years. Then actually we didn't really teach knowledge, mainly political introduction into doctrine.
Yes, doctrine.
But I still, I'm a teacher of Chinese history, so I still try to let my students know something about Chinese history. But in 1976, Mao died, and his clique gone. And
what was your feeling when he died?
Actually, most of my friends just felt relaxed, and feel. Nobody dared say felt happy. The darkest days would
Gone.
So.
But then there was the Gang of Four, wasn't there?
Yeah, his wife and his associates. After his death, and great change happened. And in 1977, Deng Xiaoping went to the power again, and decided to restore the national exam for the college entrance. And two of my brothers, one received only primary schooling, another one received high school schooling, but mainly in the countryside with my mother. Both of them succeeded in the exams, and one of them go to Peking University, and another one go to the Peking Normal University, as the top university in China. And myself, then I was school teacher. My father said, "You have studied all courses offered to students in universities before Cultural Revolution. I don't think it's a good idea if you go to the college and study these courses again. You should apply for graduate school directly." I think my father is right, so I didn't attend the national exams for undergraduate entrance and apply for a graduate school. But also the real national exam, another kind of much more difficult. So very fortunately, I succeeded. And I remember the score of my exams on Chinese history, classic Chinese history, and the English is the best in Amoy University among all students.
Which university was it?
Amoy.
Amoy. Ah, so you went across to the coast.
Yeah. So I stayed almost 7 years there, and got my PhD in 1968. It's one of
78.
75. Sorry.
75.
Sorry, 75, and was one of first 6 persons who earned their PhD degrees in history since 1949.
Really? In the whole of China? Or in Amoy?
In whole China, the first the people who earned their degree first time, I think the total number is 420, and from every discipline, engineering, science, social science, and humanities.
And you were one of them, the first 420.
Yeah.
What was your PhD subject? What were you studying?
Economic history. And I'm very fortunate. I was very fortunate. I could be a student of Professor Fu Yiling. He's the most famous economic historian in China, in particular in the Ming and the Qing period.
How do you spell his name? F-U? Fu Ying?
Fu Yiling.
F-U?
F-U, and first name.
Yeah.
E-Y-I-L-I-N-G.
Oh, right.
He's very famous.
Yeah.
And he was educated in Japan, actually. So his approach quite different from traditional Chinese scholarship. So after I graduated from Amoy University, because I decided I would move to Hangzhou, because during the period of my graduate education, I had been working on economic history of Yangtze Delta, but I never lived there. So I think it's very important to watch the area under your study on spot. So I moved here and lived in Hangzhou for 8 years. Of course, half of the period I worked abroad.
Working abroad?
Yeah.
Where?
United States.
Really?
Yeah.
During those 8 years you were...
Yeah.
You say of course, but surely it was rather unusual to...
Yeah, I think I'm a first person from the mainland who taught at UCLA. Then I am the first person who did the graduate postdoc research in US. And then I was elected as a fellow of Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars.
The Woodrow Wilson, yes.
Center.
Is that at UCLA or?
No, it's Washington D.C.
It's national. National.
National,
Yeah.
and also a fellow at the National Humanities Center at Chapel Hill. So together maybe around 4 years. And also I spent some time in Paris and Tokyo as visiting fellows. So later I decided to move to Beijing because I think Hangzhou is a very lovely place, but very few economic historians are working there. So, but in Beijing there are much more colleagues working in this field. So I moved to Beijing.
Were you married by this time or not?
No, I married just in 1978, just after I received admission from Amoy University.
I see. So you were married when you came back to Beijing?
No. Before I go to Amoy University.
Yeah, I see.
But my wife still lives in Kunming, and I working in Amoy. Then I moved to Hangzhou. My wife joined me.
Did she go to the States with you? Or?
Then no. Some in Chapel Hill and Washington D.C. She did.
Yeah.
And after we moved to Hangzhou, we have our baby, a son.
Your one child.
One child. And then 3 of us moved to Beijing in 1993 in Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. And I worked there until 1999. Then I moved to Tsinghua. And one of the reasons is in the academy, we didn't have students. So I think we need to, train some young people to take our studies. Otherwise, everybody will die. But the scholarship will continue. So I moved to Tsinghua until last year. In Tsinghua, I became a deputy director of the Institute of Economics, then chair of Department of History. And I have a good time there, and I enjoy teaching, and I have some students. Now all of them became associate professors in other universities.
You say you enjoyed you enjoyed teaching. Can you explain the sort of teaching that you did? I mean, did you do a lot of lecturing or a lot of seminars, or do you have personal 1 to 2 or 3 teaching? What kind of teaching did you do?
Yeah, 3 things.
All these things?
Yeah, all things. In particular, I think the personal instruction to the students. Some of them are very good, but in Tsinghua and also in Peking University, our classroom were open to anybody, no matter you enrolled or not. So.
Do you mean people could come in from the street?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, but some professors don't like this, but I do. So in my classroom, half of the students came from Peking University or People's University. They don't want the credits. They just want to sit there and enjoy discussion. So I think the atmosphere in the classroom is very active. So I encourage the students to challenge the mainstream scholarship, including my field of poems. So and in the end of some semesters, I ask the students put their discussions and edit it into a detailed report, and I sent them these reports to a famous website and let people know what students think about it. We criticize some famous scholars and criticize me and criticize, but there are also the different views. Some support, some criticize. I think that's very good.
These were Chinese websites.
Yeah.
And did this cause any trouble or problems? No.
No. Because it's purely academic.
Yes.
Not anything to do with the politics.
Yes. Well, that was something I was going to ask, whether you, coming from Cambridge and England, there are some things I have to be careful. I have to not show too much political bias towards one political party or another, but otherwise I can be quite open and free and critical. But did you feel, I suppose, being an expert on Chinese 18th century economic history, it didn't come up much, but did you feel that you had to be careful about what you were teaching?
I don't feel that. In 19th century is a long way ago.
Yes.
So actually, I think mainly we can speak what we think about. So, for example, my major concern in academic history is so-called search for origins of the Chinese economic miracle today. The Chinese economic growth very fast in the past 3 decades.
Yeah.
And numerous scholars within and without China just studied why and how it happened. But I think more and more scholars agreed this is not just a result of reform policy. It's a result of a long historical change. So what that? But in previous scholarship, I think mainstream view was very negative. From Hegel, Karl Marx, until
You mean
now. Even in the textbook of high school, in Chinese school, it's still very negative.
the Asiatic mode of production and
Yeah,
Asian.
and not just this, and also some new change, including Macfarlane's high
level equilibrium.
level equivalent. Mark is a friend of mine, but we also had some arguments. China is so big country, very diverse. This theory, I think, works in some parts of China, but not other parts of China. My field is Yangtze Delta. I think this theory doesn't work in the study of Yangtze Delta. So, and except besides Macfarlane, also Philip Huang you mentioned yesterday,
Yes.
we also thought the Chinese past is negative. So, Philip Huang was the first person who invited me to teach at the U.S. And we were friends then. But later my point of view changed, so he stopped to contact me.
That's a pity, because sometimes you can remain friends even if you disagree.
Yeah, but Mark is still a friend.
Yes.
Friend.
So what do you said your main question is the roots of the Chinese miracle now. So what do you think? How far back do you think the roots go in Chinese history?
I think as an economic historian, we need enough data to support your conclusion. So, in my fields, I think we can trace back to mid-16th century. Earlier, maybe, but the data is not. So, from the mid-16th century, there are very good materials. So we can use the materials to analysis the real situation of the economy and the economic change in this area in the following centuries.
And what are the main features from the mid-16th century which you think contribute to what has happened recently in China? I mean, is it the hard work of the Chinese? Is it the rice agriculture? Is it the legal system? Is it what are the main factors?
I can say what impact to Chinese economy. I can say what a feature feature of the economy of Yangtze Delta, because Yangtze Delta is a very small part of China, though it's the most important part. The Yangtze Delta accounted only 1% of Chinese territory, and less than 60% of Chinese population today. But this area produced almost 1/5 of Chinese GDP today, and almost 35 to 40% of Chinese foreign trade. But in the previous century, I think the situation also mainly similar. Very tiny place, very high density of population. If you use the theory of Macfarlane or Philip Huang, it should be under very heavy Marxian pressure, and should be very poor place. But it's a most prosperous part of the China, also of East Asia, before 19th century. So why? And I during my 3-decade studies of this area, I think many so-called modernities, modern elements of modernity you can find in this place. For example, economic structure. in the beginning of 19th century, as a result of century-long development, the economic structure of this area was not rural, was not agriculture society anymore. In particular, in the eastern part of this delta, say the present-day Shanghai area, it's a society dominated by industry and commerce, not agriculture. And this experience of industrial commerce has had a very important impact to the following century. That's why now this area was very successful in industrialization in past 3 decades, not other parts of China, even the Pearl River Delta. And second, the elements of modernity you can find in the human resources. In this area, in these centuries under study, you can find the best labor force in East Asia world. With the conclusion of the most Chinese and Japanese scholars. The population grows not very fast, and life expectancy is longer. The people was better fed and better clothed, and the literacy is very high, and the people has ordinary people had some kind of commercial skills and easily trained, easily disciplined. So that's why the foreigners arrived in Shanghai, in this area, in the mid-19th century. They find they didn't have any difficulty to recruit the good workers and employees.
Sounds very like some parts of Japan in the 19th century. It sounds like Osaka and Tokyo areas where you had all these features at that time. And so the Japanese economic miracle of the late 19th century was very easy by converting this, what was already a semi-industrial commercial society.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Actually, Ferdinand Brodeur make such a comparison in his book, but very briefly. He said, some part of China, he means the southern part of China, and Japan was very close in these aspects. So that's why this area was extremely successful in modernization. Even in early 19th century, Shanghai was the second largest industrial center in East Asia, just next to Japan, in Kanto area of Japan.
Yes, exactly.
And the biggest center of textile in production before the war. 800,000 workers were working in the modern textile factories.
What proportion, I think you said before, this is about 1% of China, is it, in this area?
Yeah, the area.
So what your argument is that 1% of China is modern? Quite semi-modern, anyway.
But according to the studies of other countries, maybe some parts of China, say Pearl River area, Pearl River Delta, or Manchuria. Manchuria, before the Japanese occupation, you can find some quite good base of industry, the heavy industry, the lords. Zhang Zuolin, Zhang Xiliang, they established a very important infrastructure, and they have a quite modern army there. So Japanese took over, and Japanese invest a lot in defense industry and heavy industry. So Manchuria also, you can see, modernized in some degree. But most successful is Yangtze though in such a very bad time, warlords fought each other in this area, and many Japanese occupation, 30% of modern industry in this area was destroyed. But still, in the last 3 decades of 19th century, this area performed extremely well. And as mentioned in the article I sent you yesterday, this area now, in terms of GDP, the total GDP, if this area was counted as independent economy, it should be 10th largest economy in the world, almost with Italy.
In the 19th century, late 19th century.
No.
Can we go back to the origins and your picture of a very dynamic and modern, in many senses, area around the Yangtze? Because the Yangtze features centrally in a lot of the recent discussions about the so-called Great Divergence thesis of Ken Pomerantz and others. I wondered if you could tell me what your feelings about that, just very briefly, that famous debate which was initiated, well, by Roy Bin Wong and Pomerantz and Gulston and others. If you could just state what the debate is and then what your feelings about how it stands at the moment, that would be great.
Ken and Bing are friends of mine, and we have very close contact. So I translated a book of Bing's, Transformed China into Chinese and published, and I also have the translation and publication of The Great Divergence of Ken. I agree with them. I think the Great Divergence really existed. So that's the basis of today's Great Convergence. Convergence, I mean the Yangtze Delta. Make a very fast catch up with Western Europe. So in my article, I just give you some figures. 3 decades ago, the GDP per capita of the Yangtze Delta was only 1/8 of Britain, but today is 60%. So this very fast catch up, I can see Great Convergence. But without the Great Divergence, I think the Great Convergence would be impossible. Why? Because many other parts of China, say Yunnan or Gansu or Henan, they have never experienced a Great Divergence with the advanced part of Europe, like England, the Netherlands, and maybe France. Before the 1800s, the economic development much, the economy, the difference between the economic growth and between England and West Europe and this area, total difference. So we can see Great Divergence. So today still quite different. But in Yangtze Delta, they had, in some aspects, in particular the GDP per capita maybe, or living standards, or economic structures, they shared some similar features. But England go first.
Why? Do you accept the Pomeranz thesis that this was due to coal and...
Actually, Pomeranz, these points, I think, from my previous research, I published an article in early 1980s about the energy and its impact to the economic growth in Jiangnan, Yangtze Delta, during the late Ming and early Qing. And the conclusion is Jiangnan, Yangtze Delta, would be impossible to produce their own industrial revolution because the trouble in energy. So after I arrived in the U.S. in late 1980s, I find the article of Wrigley, so I felt very happy. I never read his article, his works in China. It's impossible. But we have a similar view. Energy. Later, I published a serious article about not just energy and also metals, timbers, and fertilizers and other elements. But so that's my conclusion. It's impossible for Jiangnan or any parts of China produce its own industrial revolution. But if some something happened and say energy or metals or some other thing, Jiangnan could it would be if this thing available in Jiangnan, the other elements will work much better than other parts of China. So the industrial revolution would be expected and maybe even faster than the British economic, British industrial revolution, because the modern technology and other things are available now. So that's my major point. My PhD thesis also focused on these things. These theses were published in Taiwan.
Is that the book on agriculture?
No.
No.
This book discusses both industry and agriculture. Agriculture is part of them.
As you know, one theory that has been used quite a lot by economic historians and others recently is the theory of the contrast between an industrious revolution and an industrial revolution, which Jan de Vries developed, but it was actually invented by Hayami Akira in a slightly different. He meant something slightly different actually from the way he thinks that de Vries didn't quite use it in the same sense. But do you think that is helpful for what was happening in the Yangtze? Because I just wondered whether what was happening was that instead of going towards industrialization, in other words, the replacement of human energy, a replacement of human energy by non-human energy sources, which is the Industrial Revolution in the West, which I'll be talking about on Monday, China went towards something verging towards Clifford Geertz's idea of agricultural involution. In other words, people working harder and producing. There you have a distinction between Hayami's sense, which is that they work harder and improve their living standards, and the Digestion idea that they work harder in order to maintain their living standards. Now, I wondered what you thought was the situation in China.
I think that's one of my main points in my study of China economic history. It's a major topic of a chapter of my book, Early Industrialization of Yangtze Delta between 1550 to 1850. This, of course, in Chinese, published now the second edition and came up last year. The first edition 10 years ago. This chapter just focus on human resources in this area, and not just hard working, and also education, in particular practical education, knowledge, useful knowledge, and commercial skills. So I think the Yangtze Delta performed very well in three aspects. The willing of hard work, education, and commercial skills. Very well.
Was there, see, what is the essence of the British Industrial Revolution, at least as I'll argue, is that over a period of 500 years or 700 years, human energy was being replaced first by wind and water energy and animal energy, and then later increasingly by coal. So already by 1700, 50% of the energy requirements of Britain was being met by coal, and the rest, maybe half, was animal energy. In England you had horses doing a huge amount, as Wrigley points out, and you have very powerful water energy and very powerful wind. So people are doing less and less of the agricultural production. Is that the case in China?
In the aspect of energy, I think totally different. In the book I just mentioned, the chapter, the chapter focus on energy, and I make analysis. The human energy still overwhelming, dominate the production in these centuries, from the Song to mid-Qing. So that's the biggest difference between the economic growth of Britain and the Yangtze Delta, I think. But in agriculture, the animal energy plays a quite important role in Yangtze Delta, because major job like plow and harrows were taken by buffaloes. And if I counted the buffalo numbers per hectare, Yangtze Delta even bigger than Britain, but at a tiny, the tiny plot.
Yes.
So, but that, in this area there is no useful water power.
No.
And the winter power is not very reliable, and no coal. No, even no other even timber or other things not enough. This area should import even in the Qing the coal and the timber from other places of China, and the transportation cost very high. So I think it's not reasonable to use a machine to replace the human energy. So in my book, my conclusion is, compared to the economic structure of Britain during the late 18th century. The economic structure, structure of Yang Delta we call the super higher structure. Super higher, because main energy is still human muscle.
Yes, yes. One thing I can just ask you is about the work you're now doing and what your new project is.
Yeah. We met at Cambridge 2 years ago. One thing you mentioned impressed me very much. I asked you, you changed your interest fields greatly, from British history to anthropology, then to technological history. You said you just try to have some new challenges. Otherwise, it will be painful thing for a scholar to do the same thing all his life. So these words really impress me. I think it's a good thinking about our life and our intelligence. So I have working on the economic history for 3 decades, mainly Jiangnan area, and focus on mid-16th to 19th century. Now I've got interested more and more of other fields. Now military history and global history. So the project I'm doing is the late military reform. This reform happens in the turn of 17th and the 16th and 17th century. Then the international situation in East Asia changed greatly, and new and old foreign and native elements interact each other. Very interesting. And the Manchu rise and the Conquer China is a result of this. We can see globalization in East Asia. So, how we should evaluate the Chinese response to this new thing? That's very important. So now I just try to take this as a start to analysis, not just economy, also politics, policy making, and social organizations, and diplomatic relations, and technology advance, and also military actions together. Now I just finished an article about the central artisans, arsenals of Beijing in this period, and the next I will do the other job related to this thing.
Excellent.